Howdy, I'm Big Juicy, and I'm here in Granbury, Texas, where Texas history lives, to check out the story of an American assassin who escaped the authorities and settled right here in Texas. Can you blame him? The story that most people know about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln starts in Ford's Theater during a performance of Our American Cousin. John Wilkes Booth, a famous actor, entered the presidential box and shot Lincoln in the back of the head with his Derringer pistol. He timed the shot to this funny line in the play. "Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal, you sock-gologizing old man-trap." Bystanders said that Lincoln was laughing as the shot went off. Lincoln died the next morning on April 15, 1865. Since Lincoln had instituted the first income tax, the country commemorated his death by designating the 15th of April as U.S. Income Tax Day. This gave birth to the saying, "Nothing is certain except death and taxes." Booth then jumped out of the box onto the stage below, but his riding spur got tangled in the flag and he landed awkwardly, breaking his left leg. After shouting some Greek words that no one knew, he fled on horseback. Soldiers caught up to him 12 days later at the Garrett farmhouse in Virginia. He was cornered and shot in the neck. Then soldiers drug him out to the front porch where he died 3 hours later. But is this how it really happened? 7 years later, Finis Langdon Bates, actress Kathy Bates' grandfather, settled in Granbury, Texas. He was a lawyer like Lincoln. His first client was a man indicted by the feds for selling whiskey and tobacco without a license in nearby Glenrose. While meeting with his client, Bates met a gentleman named John St. Helen. John lived in this little cabin in Glenrose and he sold whiskey and tobacco without a license. Turns out John was the guilty party and Bates' client was innocent. Bates asked John to make things right, but after some thinking, John St. Helen gave him a wallet full of money to pay the man's legal bills, and that was it. John St. Helen and Bates became good friends, and John would hang out in Bates' office in Granbury, quoting works by Shakespeare. Bates said that John St. Helen's elocution skills were like nothing he had ever seen or heard. After watching a play together, St. Helen started giving a critique in personal acting lessons to one of the actors. This was truly unusual behavior for a saloon owner. So he eventually got bored with Glenrose and moved his saloon business to the south side of Granbury Square. 5 years later, John became sick and he was fading away and asked to speak to Finis alone. John whispered in his ear, "I'm dying. My name is John Wilkes Booth, and I'm the assassin of President Lincoln. Get the picture of myself from under the pillow. I leave it with you for my future identification. Notify my brother Edwin Booth of New York City." This is very, very strange, but it gets even stranger. They rubbed his body down with Brandy, and he started to recover. After several weeks, John St. Helen was well again. So he asked his friend Bates, "You remember anything I told you when I was sick?" Bates said he did, and John reminded him of his obligations as his attorney to keep these things private. Returning from being out of town on business for several weeks, Bates was approached by John St. Helen. "Come with me to the open prairie and we will have a talk." So they went about a half a mile out of town and sat on some rocks. John told Bates about how his group conspired to kidnap Lincoln, but since General Lee had surrendered to Grant a few days before, the plans had to change. Vice President Andrew Johnson, who was in on the conspiracy, met with John in a bar and said that Lincoln needed to die, and he wanted him to do it. Grant was in town, so Johnson promised to keep him from accepting his invitation to join Lincoln at Ford's Theater. Johnson also provided Booth's means of escape. John told Bates he successfully escaped and eventually made his way down to Glenrose. Bates asked, "Who was killed in Garrett's farmhouse then?" John told him that he had dropped his journal and photographs on the ride because he was riding with a broken leg. He sent a man named Ruddy or Roby or Robbie, something like that, to go back and get them. He was very similar in appearance to Booth, so when the soldiers found Booth's personal items on him, they believed they had the right man. A few months later, the two men parted ways. Finis Bates went to Memphis, and John decided to pursue mining in Colorado. They kept in touch with each other for about 20 years, but eventually drifted apart. Bates didn't really believe John's stories, but as the years passed by, he read many books on the assassination of Lincoln. This is where he found out that Johnson's inaugural address, which was given just 3 hours after Lincoln had died, did not even mention Lincoln. He also found out that the sole purpose of Lincoln having tickets to the theater that night was to entertain General Grant. Grant declined the invitation because he received a letter saying he needed to visit his daughter in Dubuque, Iowa. This started an obsession in Bates that drove him to write a book in 1907 called Escape and Suicide of John Wilkes Booth. Well, as the title suggests, we haven't covered the whole story yet, just a tidbit. Well, the next time you're in Granbury Town Square and you notice the name St. Helen, remember the stories told by one of her early residents. And when you see a show at the Opera House next to John's old bar, imagine him jumping off the balcony, shouting some Greek words that no one knows, and riding off into the Texas sunset. Well, I'm Big Juicy, and this has been Big Juicy Tidbit number 10. Please subscribe to my channel to receive updates when new videos are posted. Also, visit my website at bigjuicytidbits.com to see additional content for each video. And remember, some people make history, and some people make up history. Until next time, keep it juicy.